Okay, what inspired us to start the company, Jen? Let's go back as we now celebrating our 10 years, but I think it went back even further than that. When Jen and I first met, Jen was working at a company called Iris, and I was working at Sasfin Financial Advisory Services, and Jen was a service provider to Sasfin, and she was helping us implement Xplan into Sasfin Financial Advisory. So we met then, and I think it was a meeting of minds. Jen came with all her wonderful knowledge of what Xplan can do and her organized brain in the way she thinks about things. And on the other side, I came with this years and years of business knowledge about how an advisory business runs. And we started chatting, and we were understanding from each other how difficult it is for advisors to implement software into a business. And this was an enormous gap. And we sort of chatted for quite a while about what we could do with this information, because we kept saying to each other, remember, Jen, we kept saying, this is a business opportunity. What do we do with this? And we faffed around with it for quite a while, if I remember. And eventually we challenged each other. We said, come on, we're going to go and put this business plan together. And at the end of putting the business plan together, we think it's going to work, then we're going to do it. So we made a commitment at the time and said, you know, if it does work, we're going to do this. We're not going to sit and chat about it anymore. And I flew down to Cape Town because Jen had moved from Joburg to Cape Town. And we went and sat in a restaurant called Dunes, right on the beach in Hout Bay. And we sat there and ate and drank. Well, not, I don't think we drank anything other than coffee or water or whatever. So I don't think drinking in terms of alcohol, although by the end of that, we probably needed a bit of alcohol. And we drafted our initial business plan. And by the end of it, we looked at each other and said, this could actually work. And we said, okay, we're going to do it. And I think, I don't know whether we scared ourselves more. We should have been scared, but we were pretty ignorant at the time and didn't even know what starting a business was all about. So I'm going to ask Jen. Jen, go ahead and add your sort of flavor to what I've just said.
Yeah, I think that is when we terrified ourselves, when we'd made that commitment to sit down, whack out the business plan, and then at the end of it, because it was about 5 years that we were talking about it off and on. So it was a long time before we actually had the guts to make the decision. So we knew in our hearts of hearts we could do it, but it doesn't make it any less terrifying to actually step out and I think we scared ourselves when we came to the end of that day sitting at Dunes and we made the decision, right, we're going to jump. And then stuff starts getting real. That's when it got real. And thank goodness we were quite naive going into it, as you would be if you've never started a business before. There's no amount of preparation that can actually sufficiently mentally, financially, and emotionally prepare you for what it takes to actually stick it out. And I think we had this goal in our mind that like we've got to get to whatever it was, like 1,000 days or something. Boy, those 1,000 days dragged some days, and other days they were brilliant. And it's so bizarre to look back on 10 years and realize how much we've grown, and also how, although what we actually have done in the business, it doesn't conform exactly to what our business plan laid out, but the essential seed of it is there. And I sometimes do, go back and have a look at that initial business plan. And we thought we had it all figured out. And going back and looking at it now, you think, oh, sweet. But we made it work. And oftentimes through sheer determination and nothing.
There were quite a lot of hurdles. The one thing, we were very fortunate in that a friend of Jen's, who's a financial advisor, was prepared to invest in us and give us capital for the startup of the business. Without that, we probably would never have ventured out. So all I'm saying is, Linton, shout out, thank you to you for enabling us to do that. But I think some of the biggest hurdles were, we went in, our business plan identified a certain technology provider as being key to the success of what we were planning to do. And after our initial naive, innocent engagements with that vendor, we walked away and said, you know what, we have to pivot this business because we can't do it the way we thought. And I think that was the biggest challenge, was accepting that and going with a way riskier route of building the business. In the end, it's paid off extremely well for us, because from going from our initial plan where we were dependent on one technology provider, we went to a space where Linktank was very much an independent provider to businesses, and that has stood us in great stead when we talk to advisors. Advisors are very sensitive about who you get paid by, and we've often been asked that question. So, do you get paid by ABC technology provider? And we're always very proud to say, no, we don't. We represent you as the client, and we get paid by you and not. So it stood us, that pivot was an enormous help to us in the early days. That doesn't mean to say that the business flowed in after that. It was an uphill slog for the first 2 years of going out there and getting people to hear about Linktank and what we do. And initially, there was no understanding of what is it. Every time we explained what we do, it was like we were stared at blankly. People didn't really get it. And remembering that we're talking to advisors, eventually I said to Jen the one day, so how do we position this business so the people we're talking to understand what we're doing? And that's where we came up with our Linktank six-step process, which talks about taking you through a process of understanding your business needs in terms of technology, working through putting together your business requirements, going out and looking for technology that suits you as a business. So it really forced us to think about that and position it in a way that was understandable. And that made another big difference as well. So overcoming the challenge of people understanding what we did and staring at us blankly, suddenly that picture and that idea made sense to them because it was based on the six-step financial planning process. So that helped us a lot. The other big challenge we had was, quite frankly, being new to business, we spent way too much money in the beginning. There's no doubt about that. We did not anticipate the length of time it would take us to turn a profit in the business. And you have to be prepared for that. So ensure that if you've put aside your own personal money as your resource to draw upon, or you've got investors' money, double the time you have in your head to reach a point of turning a profit, because it does. It takes much longer than you think, and it's a hardship in a way. And I say hardship because even though we had the cash in the bank to help us do the business, it was a hardship learning that just spending it willy-nilly is not the way to go. You actually have to budget, and we had to learn all of this the hard way. So yeah, those were the main challenges I think that we did overcome, and I'm sure there are others. Jen, what have I forgotten?
No, I think those, I agree with you. Those are the main ones. I mean, the first one being, going into the business thinking that we've got a deal wrapped up. And it was the single biggest risk that we identified in our business plan. I know because I read it about a year ago again. And we said, if this vendor kind of double backs on us, we're really in trouble. And to be 3 months into the business and that's exactly what happens is devastating. But I think one of the magic ingredients that we have even today in this business came out of that. So we sat down and we got really good at having open, hard, honest conversations and putting all the ugly stuff on the table and making hard decisions. And I think that our first taste of that came out of that, and it's a flavor that still permeates through the business today. And we sat down and we looked at it and we said, you know what, we've got two choices. We can either submit to what this vendor is trying to do to us, and get wrapped up in some sort of exclusivity that really will buckle us, and we won't be able to do anything that we set out to do. Or we can, cast that aside and start fresh. And that's what we did. We started fresh. We went out there, forged new relationships, came up with new stuff to do, and it's probably one of the best decisions we ever made, because exactly what Nina's just said, our independence is one of the most important things in any engagement, and it keeps us honest as well. And sometimes I think it would have been easier to do it the other way, but it certainly wouldn't have afforded us the longevity that we have today, or the freedom to be able to make the decisions that we've made that have been truly in the best interests of our clients, of the industry, and of our team. And that's very important to us, even today. And I think that's that's one of the magic ingredients. I think the other challenges kind of fail in comparison. I mean, there were tough months. There were months where you get paid late by clients, and you don't have the cash flow necessarily to tide you over for 3 months while you wait for money to come in, and you've just got to make stuff work, especially at the beginning. But all in all, every single hard time has led us to bigger and better.
And has honed us into being better business owners, and the way we run the business. We are really quite, we're very aware of what we spend our money on and how we spend it. We're way more careful about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's an important thing. It's it's spending money wisely and being really lean and mean, and actually that's we also made a conscious decision that we didn't want to become huge and bloated with lots and lots of people and have millions of employees and layers of middle management and that kind of stuff, because we'd both come out of environments where we had become somewhat allergic to those types of things. And that's also served us well, because today we have this most incredible team of people that are autonomously make decisions, and have the freedom to be able to stretch their intellectual muscles in whatever direction they deem possible, and that's quite a difficult thing to achieve if you've got a really big team. So I think it's served us well. All of those hard times have served us well.
I think the one that always pops into my mind, and this goes back to even before we left our jobs to go to join Linktank, is, and it still amuses us today, but they do say, small minds and all that, but we get amused by the story every time. And that is in the run-up to leaving our jobs and starting working at Linktank. Jen and I, we had about a 3-month period, because we decided we're going to do the right thing and give our respective employers 2 or 3 months notice. I think we were very kind, probably 3 months. But there was a gap of about 3 months by the time we had made the decision, okay, we're going to go for this, and the point where we had to hand in our resignations. And I can tell you that impatience, and it sounds terrible, it had nothing to do with hating where we were, but it was this impatience to leave and get started on our dream and what we had planned to do was so great that she and I were constantly exchanging updated versions of our resignation letters. And the things, and you have a day where work irritates you, and then your whole letter, the tone changes and you share it. And we kept sharing these letters with us. And I mean, if we could see them today, some of them were absolutely hilarious and others were quite rude, and we would never share them. But the point is, it was this anticipation. And I think sharing those resignation letters with each other kept us going through that 3-month time where we had to keep quiet at work while we waited to give them our 3 months notice. But anyway, when we did hand in the letters, they were perfectly above board. There was nothing in there that shouldn't have been there. But the previous 3 months, oh, it was hilarious, the versions we came up with.
I think the other thing that sticks in my mind is, especially in those first couple of years, because the other thing that is, I suppose, remarkable in a way is that neither of us are really salespeople. So neither of us were rushing out there to be in front of people at every opportunity. That was quite a difficult thing for both of us to get the hang of. And also in an environment where you are having to explain to people, because what we were offering was quite unusual for the time. It's not unusual anymore, thankfully. Um, but because we were having to stretch ourselves into places that didn't come naturally to either of us, because you've got to sell, right? We we had this and this funny little, I think it was like a little Excel based thing with a thermometer graphic, and every day we would sort of compare where we were on the stressometer with each other, so that we could kind of co-regulate. And if I was having a really bad day, then Nina would pick up, and vice versa. And I think that just sticks with me, because that's part of that initial, I don't know, kind of camaraderie that has brought us to where we are.
Yeah. And we still maintain that stressor meter in a different way to this day. And the wonderful thing was about the stressor meters, we never had a bad day on the same day. So if Jen had a bad day, I was having a good day, and vice versa. So we were really able to encourage each other and say, come on, let's keep going. Let's just try one more month. And then we try one more month. And then okay, now try another month. And so we carried on. So yeah, it was stressful times, but it was good times.
Yeah, it was great times. And I think nothing also makes you appreciate your clients more than that. So that first big deal we signed, it was, yeah, that the euphoria of actually going, oh, maybe we can do this. Like we were right. We can do this. It's brilliant, because you go through so much self-doubt that kind of fades over the years, but it always sticks with you. Sure. So look, we're in a place now where there's never been this much change in such a short period in this industry. A lot of where we're going, I think, is going to be driven by new technologies, or newer technologies like AI and so on. And I don't think we've even started to sniff what that is going to feel like in the next 5 years. So I think that the great thing about Linktank is that we have made it our business to make sure we know what's going on in the tech space. Sometimes even in very unprofitable ways, we make sure we stay on top of what's going on. Um, and we pride ourselves on being able to pivot, and to be able to seek out new niches in the, there are a million gaps still in this industry. A lot of the same gaps that still were there 10 years ago are still there today. And I think our special talent is for spotting those patterns, and coming up with ways to deliver services into those gappy places. So we're moving into a space of much more automation, much more collaboration. I think the vendors that don't want to collaborate, and there are still quite a few of those, I think those ones are going to turn themselves into islands. So I think there is going to be a bit of flux. We're already seeing flux in the industry, and we've got the highest number of tech providers in this industry that we've ever had right now in this country. There's been a lot more specialization over the last couple of years. And so the need for things like collaboration and working together and integration is a greater need than ever. And with the regulatory environment really increasingly clamping down, I think the only way that we can move forward as an industry from a technology perspective is together. I don't think there's going to be space for islands. And fortunately, that's a place Linktank plays well in. Collaboration is very much our game. We don't believe anybody is going to get to the start or to the finish line on their own.
Yes, I just want to add to that of course now AI being the biggest buzzword out there at the moment. And I think what people fail to understand is that the business of being an advisor is about people relationships. And as Jen mentioned, regulatory compliance that is overwhelming advisors to the point where a small business is battling to cope, battling to keep up with all of that, and being driven into the arms of the bigger networks and joining there simply to be protected with things like the IT and data privacy, etc., etc. But I think the job of an advisor's world is not to take the advisor out, but to allow the advisor to step away from business operational stuff that overloads him at the moment, because compliance and regulation becomes an overload and it takes away the time they need to actually talk to their clients and form those relationships, because the value of an advisor's business is based on his or her relationships with clients. That's really what it comes down to. So I think that a lot of what we can look at going forward is how can advisors use AI in their business, and then how does that allow them to go out and continue to do what they do best, and that's relationships. And so to step away from the operations a lot more, step away from concerns around compliance and regulation. How does that all fit into the business? How can that be automated in the business? How can data play a part in helping them to conform to regulation? So what does the FSCA need in terms of reporting, and how does data enable that? So all of that aspect of it is going to become bigger and bigger. But definitely, I think advisors are feeling almost like they are being cut off from their clients, because there's all this technology that's happening and they don't understand what to do with it in their businesses. And we'd really like to explore that more than what we are even currently, and try and chart a path forward. So you can go to an advisory business and say, this is what you should be using. This is how you should be dealing with that kind of a problem. I mean, that's what we've done in the past, and what we've sort of preached in terms of get your business requirements together, do this, do that. We are going to clients now and they're telling us they've already taken those steps. So we know that what we've been preaching as the way to go has already been taken up in the market. We're seeing a lot more of that. So now we need to go to the next step. Okay, great. So now you've got all of this happening. How do we make it easier for you to make your business work in a highly technology and regulation focused industry so you can talk to clients? But I'm sure even that message is going to change as we explore it going forward. But as Jen said, we pivot quite easily. We are very open to listening to other people's opinions and collaborating with other people to achieve the best, not only for ourselves, but for our clients and everybody else out there in the industry.